stay online?
He's coming here, actually.
He'll be here. Okay.
Yeah, he's dropping.
Got it.
Okay, I'm assuming we are ready in the chambers.
We are.
All right. The Ramsey County Board of Commissioners meeting is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Fretham.
Here.
Maris Castillo.
Here.
McDonough.
Here.
McGuire.
Here.
Ortega.
Aye.
Reinhardt.
Here.
And Carter.
Here. Thank you very much. I would ask that Commissioner Fretham would lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance while the rest of us go on mute. Commissioner?
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Fretham. The agenda of the October 26th meeting is before you. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioners Fretham and Ortega. We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments on the agenda of October 26th or questions? Thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Fretham.
Aye.
Reinhardt.
Aye.
Maris Castillo.
Aye.
McDonough.
Aye.
McGuire.
Aye.
Ortega.
Aye.
And Carter.
Aye, thank you much. The agenda has passed and the minutes of October 19th are before you. Is there a motion?
So moved, Madam
Approval.
Chair. Oh, second.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonough, McGuire. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes of October 19th? If not, would the clerk please call the roll?
Reinhardt.
Aye.
Fretham.
Aye.
Maris Castillo.
Aye.
McDonough.
Aye.
McGuire.
Aye.
Ortega.
Aye.
And Carter.
Aye, thank you, and the minutes have passed. It is with great pleasure that I will turn now to Commissioner Ortega for a proclamation on Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Commissioner.
Thank you very much. I guess I'll begin by asking both, I think my good buddy Shelley Klein is here from the Domestic Abuse Center, and also Emily Human. So if they would be present, and I know Sarah is here also, and the rest of the folks from the department. Let me begin by saying, whereas domestic violence is a pattern of behavior used to gain or maintain power and control over an intimate partner, and that domestic abuse and all forms and systems of oppression must be eliminated. And whereas domestic violence involves physical, sexual, psychological, and economic abuse, intimidation, and isolation, and happens to 1 in every 3 women in their lifetime. Domestic violence touches the lives of people of all ages, backgrounds, genders, and gender identities, sexual orientation, spiritual beliefs, and circumstances, when a home becomes a place of fear and hopelessness and leaves in its wake a devastating impact on the entire community. And whereas we voice compassion and pledge action for the families, friends, and communities that have experienced the anguish of domestic violence, as at least 20 women and 1 man in Minnesota were killed by a current or former intimate partner in 2020, and at least 3 children and 6 more friends, family, or bystanders lost their lives during domestic violence incident. And whereas we further voice our compassion and commitment for the 16 minor children in Minnesota who lost their mothers in the past year due to domestic violence. And whereas Ramsey County is recognized as a national leader for its groundbreaking response to domestic violence, ranging from the critical work of the Ramsey County Attorney's Office, Community Corrections, and Sheriff's Office to social services and public health. And whereas we honor the pioneering work of the community-based advocates who founded the nation's first shelter, have been instrumental in the creation of a national model that reduces domestic violence and homicides, and have implemented culturally relevant approaches and responses. And whereas as a county, we acknowledge that solutions to end domestic violence would only happen with the commitment of our entire community to ensure the safety of victims, and our tireless work with our community-based partners will help create an equitable and violence-free community for all. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners declares October 2021 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Ramsey County. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I guess I'll turn it over to Shelley and Emily. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ortega, and all the Ramsey County Commissioners. You have been phenomenal partners in reaching and serving victims of domestic violence. If it wasn't for public health, SOS, Workforce Solutions, the probation, sheriffs, the jail, and I'm just naming a few, an agency like mine and agencies throughout Ramsey County would not have been able to meet the increased demand for services 24 hours a day, especially with COVID-19. This year alone, we served over 6,400 victims and their children. Many of them, at least 500 of them, are acutely homeless, and the complexities and the level of violence have all risen. But if it wasn't for our entire community and members like you, victims wouldn't have safe havens. They wouldn't have 24 access to services. And for that, and I have some of my coworkers on with me today, we are extremely grateful. And I want to thank all of you.
Some of us were trying to unmute so that you could hear the hand claps. It's a little difficult virtually. Sometimes there will be hands on the screen as well. I want to thank you so much for being here with us and others as well this morning. We are fortunate to have partners in our community, such as SPIP and other organizations, which help us to meet the needs of those who are fighting domestic violence in their lives. It is important work, it's critical work, and of course, during our recovery process of COVID-19 pandemic, with everything else that's happened in our world this past couple of years, it has been so good to know that partners are responding daily. And thank you for mentioning those in Ramsey County who are participating and supporting that response as well. We appreciate it. I was fortunate to be able to, together with County Attorney Choi, be at the celebration last night and hear such a fine program that paid tribute to the survivors and also to the supporters. So thank you so very much. I know all of us here celebrate your efforts and are glad that you're partners with us in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Commissioner Ortega, for the reading of the proclamation. Are there any other comments before we move on? Shelley, again, thank you for being with us always. You see the hearts, the hands, and the thanks to you.
Thank you so much. You're wonderful partners.
Chair Carter.
Good morning.
I would like to just say a couple of words really quickly on behalf
Oh, I'm
of
sorry.
SOS. That's okay.
Oh,
Madam
Emily,
Chair,
I
County
apologize.
Commissioners. I'm so quiet over here, right?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, County Commissioners, good morning. Shelley and her community and staff, I want to say thank you for the recognition of this service. Without this service for our community, residents would be falling a lot through many various cracks in the system. And what SPIP has always done is provided a safety net to our community. And on behalf of all of the residents you serve, thank you very much. And SOS is grateful for our partnership.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Emily. I appreciate your piping up on the screen for us, noting the partnership that you have and the importance of that work that you are doing regularly together with Ramsey County staff and community. All right, I'm looking to the screen to see if there are further comments from commissioners. I see none at this point. Again, a hearty thanks to all of you. And we will move on then in the agenda beyond to our COVID update with our county manager. I see a screen highlighted or an individual highlighted. County manager, would you please share if there is someone there?
Madam Chair, I don't know what you're referencing in terms of a
Okay.
highlighted screen, so we're just going to plow ahead if that's okay.
All right, thank you. I think it was actually Shelley Klein leaving us. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Good morning. I will turn it over to Sarah Holly, Director of Public Health, to get us kicked off today on our COVID-19 update.
Thank you, County Manager, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Good morning. I'm joining you virtually this morning from the board chambers. It's great to be back here to provide the COVID-19 update. Mr. Michael Lindsay, can you go ahead and put up our vaccine dashboard? Thank you, sir. All right, so as of, I want to circle back to July 27th, where we saw our surge in the Delta variant. We were at 54 cases per 100,000 at that point. As of yesterday, October 25th, we are at about 150 cases per 100,000. Finally seeing some real declines here. And Mike, if you want to scroll down a little bit to our zip codes, I want to highlight some, steady changes and some things that are remaining the same. So in our 55103 zip code, there has been no change since last week. We still remain steady at 72% for our vaccine rates there. For our 55106 zip code, we saw an increase to 74%, which is great, up from 73%. And for our 55130 zip code, we're still remaining steady at 70% with no change. Overall, we're 78% of eligible Ramsey County residents have received at least one vaccine dose. So that's wonderful. For our 16 plus population in Ramsey County, has increased to 75.5% of those eligible have completed the vaccine series. So that could be, the 2-dose series or that 1 dose, up from 72.5%, and has increased to 79.7% of our 16 plus population having received at least 1 dose. For our 12 plus population, which we highlighted a lot last week, 74.6% of our county residents have completed the series, which is increased from 71.7%. And then we're seeing that same population at 78.9% having received 1 or more doses, and that's an increase from 75.8% last week. I just want to note that a number of factors may have influenced the changes in reported vaccine rates over the past week, including data cleaning, our dashboard updates on the state partner site. It's really too early to tell how much momentum these increases will maintain, but it's encouraging to see as of yesterday. Thank you, Mike. If we'll scroll down to our summary this week. And so, perfect. And so we're, as of yesterday, October 25th, 57,880 doses have been administered at 397 clinics. Again, 62,361 vaccines have been given, including those given by our redistribution partners. And we have around 62,696 doses that have been received, including those redistributed through partnership agreements. And we're really thankful for our partnerships in community, these continued partnerships. And I just want to give a shout out to our continued, sustainment of our COVID-19 response and the team in public health, continuing to leverage those partnerships and build partnerships and community to continue the vaccine distribution. During the past week, 134 doses were administered through 7 COVID-19 vaccine clinics and across existing client services. So for the week of October 24th through October 30th, Public Health expects to administer around 200 doses of vaccine. Just want to highlight, thank you, Michael. Just want to highlight some changing conditions affecting capacity or demand. We started offering our third dose vaccines on Saturday, October 9th. As of Monday, October 25th, we have given 63 Pfizer boosters here in Ramsey County. We are excited to begin offering Moderna boosters as soon as this Friday, or actually this Saturday, October 30th. Currently awaiting some detail on doses from the state, but we're planning forward. We'll continue to offer, of course, our incentives for that first and second dose series, and we've given out approximately 130 incentives this past week. So we'll continue that effort while supplies last. Our COVID-19 mitigation work continues, as I mentioned last week, with our school partners to reduce the spread of COVID this year as we await the arrival of information around being able to give those vaccines to our 5 to 11-year-olds. I'll continue to recommend universal masking, weekly testing, and getting vaccinated when eligible, and perhaps as early as November 4th. And Incident Commander Laura Anderson can speak to that more, but that's what we know to date. Now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Ogawa or Laura Anderson for any final comments. Thank you. Or we'll stand for questions also.
I did unmute. One of the things that has come up recently in the news, and I thought I might just comment briefly, is about Delta Plus variants. It has been shown to be about 6% present in the UK, and so we're watching it carefully. There's only been a small number of cases identified in the US thus far. It is a variant of a variant, so to speak. It's in the lineage of Delta. The concern is that it is even more infectious than Delta, and so that's the worry. The general coverage of the vaccines thus far is also being monitored, though. And so some might ask, what happened to Mu? Nothing happened to Mu. It's still out there. It's still being watched, but we haven't seen the rise in the percentage of cases. And so variants remain variants of interest until they actually create havoc in the real world, like Delta did. So Delta became a variant of concern because in the real world, it did all the things that we were worried it would. So, but I just thought I'd mention that. Sometimes I like to get ahead of the press. It's impossible, but at least thought we would comment on it today.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of commissioners whose hands are up for questions. I'll call first on Commissioner Fretham and then Commissioner McGuire. Commissioner Fretham.
Sure, and I could wait till Laura Anderson speaks as well if necessary. But I need to respond to a constituent concern, and so I'm hoping I can get some information about the kind of measures you take as a public health department, along with our medical director, to balance risk and concerns and make the policy recommendations to the board. This one specifically relates to our requirements around masking in Ramsey County facilities and how that applies in our hockey rinks and youth sports.
Commissioner, thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner Fretham. So is the ongoing question just around the concern that masking on the ice or masking just in general at our facilities?
So I haven't called back yet. I plan to do that after the meeting. Thought I'd check in with y'all first. My assumption is requirement, if you could share the requirements in terms of masking in our ice arenas and then talk about,
sure.
I'm assuming parental concerns are just physical activity and masks.
So at any Ramsey County facility, masks are required. And I think our staff are doing a really good job of trying to enforce that. particularly at, I would say, Aldrich Arena and any of the other spaces and places where we know that hockey has started or will be picking up. I know Dr. Ogawa and Laura may be closer to the action on this as far as just safety measures, but we are working consistently with Daniel Schmidt and a number of folks that are part of our safety team to assess the situation. But masking policies are universal here at Ramsey County, and so we expect for community that are attending events to adhere to those policies. So, but I don't know if Dr. Ogawa or Laura have any further comments.
I know that some of the issues have arisen on social media about the concern about exercising with a mask on. Most studies have shown, and actually comfortably, that the level of activity that individuals have does not create any kind of low oxygen level, anything along those lines. The masks that are recommended are for comfort and breathability. And so there can be shifts made for individuals who are taking part in the athletic function. That's the medical side. And as public health, even more so, when we looked at situations where people were exercising, breathing heavily, on the ice, there was an actual known outbreak specifically linked to hockey in another state, and it had to do with the airflow based on the cooling of the ice, maintaining certain, maintaining a layer essentially of recirculated air. So this is one of the reasons why we have, in public health, have been a little bit more adamant about that, about mask wearing on the ice and with, and especially around the arena. So I can share, and at any point I can share that it was in the MMWR, so the CDC released that, and so I can share that with anybody.
Thank you so much. I'd love to have that just to follow up. And that was what I assumed and what I've experienced. I know last summer I ran a 5K in a mask just to prove it can be done. Some asthmatic did it. It was very hot that day, but I wasn't any worse than I would have been without a mask. So
Thank you, Commissioner Fretham, for your sacrifice. We appreciate it. Did you have more? Okay, I'm going to go on then to Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to everyone who continues to do great work in this area. I just have a couple of questions. Director Holly, I think I misheard you. You said that you've only given 63 booster doses. What did you? The screen went down when you were talking about it, and I was like, oh, so I didn't see the screen, and I misheard you, but I just want to. I'm guessing we've given a lot more, but maybe is that just directly, given by Ramsey County people? Because I know a number of us are getting them at drugstores and things. I mean,
correct.
Most people are getting them at drugstores, but
or even their primary care.
Or their primary care.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner McGuire, great. You did hear me correctly. Okay. And so we started giving third doses on October 9th, which feels probably like a while back, but we have given 63 Pfizer boosters or third doses at our Ramsey County sites. And so because of the availability, as you've mentioned, and accessibility, we are encouraging people to seek out, other options. We're certainly available to provide those third doses. But also because of age and pre-existing conditions, people should be talking with their healthcare providers also. So people could be getting their third dose at a variety of locations, which is great. So we are seeing right now to date, 63 Pfizer third doses have been given at our sites.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I just wanted to clarify that because it feels like there's a lot more being given. I mean, almost everyone I know that's eligible has one. So I was lucky to be eligible, and I called to get my booster. I got my flu shot, and I wanted to get tested because I got back from being out of town for a little while, and I had a cough. So I thought, oh, I should get tested. And the pharmacist I was talking to, she said, oh, no, you don't need to get tested. You don't really have all the symptoms. I wouldn't get tested. And I'm like, oh, That's really weird. And then, of course, it took me a long time to try to figure out how to get tested. And I know we have one site, right, the Roy Wilkins, where we can get tested in Ramsey County. And there's numerous other sites like in the West Metro area. And I'm wondering if we're gonna have any more sites to get tested, because I know now it's flu season and people are nervous. And I mean, I'm more tempted to not get. I mean, my temptation would be not to get tested again, because of course I was negative and I just had this cough. And but I feel like I should, if I have the cough again, I should get tested. So I want it to be easier for people. So can you talk a little bit about that? It just didn't feel that easy for me to get a test.
Chair Carter, Commissioner McGuire, I would be happy to take that question. We understand the need, the high demand for testing, especially now across Ramsey County and across Minnesota. Governor Walz has issued some new resources around testing. We will have more access to rapid antigen testing as another option for our residents. You will see rapid antigen testing being distributed at Roy Wilkins, as well as a number of other local community clinics in the weeks to come. It's certainly, I mean, we've had the same conversation with our school partners, with parents and families right now. I understand there are 3 additional community testing sites coming online soon across Minnesota, but certainly there's a gap there that needs to be better resourced with a variety of tests at this time.
I appreciate that. I just don't want people to say, oh, that just took me too long to drive there and get that done. I'm just gonna, weather it. I'm gonna tough it out, but I don't want to feel like that. I don't want others to feel like that. So I'm glad we're getting more testing sites. I want it to be easier for people. And so just to clarify, drugstores are offering them, but it takes so long to make an appointment, and they're weeks. It feels like you have to schedule 1 weeks away. And I'm like, well, that doesn't help, because I want to know now whether I've, been exposed. So just to affirm, yeah.
Chair Carter, Commissioner McGuire, I'd also like to mention the at-home testing through Vault and through the state. Individuals can actually order a kit ahead of time to have at home, so that when and if you want to be testing, it is a saliva test, so you have to be ready to give that sample. But then it's present, and I know a lot of families are doing that. I just speak to my experience. It was door dashed to my home. So I ordered it and it was at my home within 2 hours, which surprised me, but it's also a really good service. You do need, it has to be Zoom enabled. So you do have to then sign on, and the person has to watch you collect the sample, and it needs to be mailed back, but it's a relatively slick program as well. And then one other thing is the next time you have that question, go ahead and just give me a call, and I'll give you the right answer, which is you need to be tested, and we'll direct you to the right place.
Yeah, I was quite I thought, I can't believe you're telling me not to get tested, but I went and got tested anyway. But so can you remind us how to get those tests then? Do we go online? How do we get those? And I actually understand that drugstores are actually selling them for like $25 or selling tests. So maybe that's another resource, but they're free otherwise if you go to the testing clinics. But then can you remind us where to get that at-home testing, or how do we get that?
Madam Chair, Commissioner McGuire, we can send the link out. It's Minnesota Department of Health. And I was actually on there last week, just kind of exploring what resources were available. But we can send that link. We also provided that to our school partners to share with families. So William Moore shared that in that write-up, the recommendation sheet that we sent out. But I can follow up with that information later this morning.
And I would just say that I got tested. A person that was at the same meeting I was at got tested, and he was positive. So not from Minnesota, but so it's still out there, and so we should all get tested if you have any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner McGuire, for underscoring that need and for the sharing of information that we just had. I would assume that information can also be found on our website. I just see links to the Department of Health, etc.
Right.
And I will call on Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things I'm wondering about is, since we know that there are younger people, younger adults and children that are contracting COVID, when will, because right now I think it's still for Pfizer anyhow, it is still that you have to be 65 or older and have other mitigating factors. So when will it be available more universally, the booster?
I'll take this one, Chair Carter, Commissioner Reinhardt. It's a good question. The reason that we're recommending boosters is that we really feel that it's for the individuals who have reduced antibody and immune response. The younger you are, the longer or the better immune system you have. And so most of the studies that have looked at individuals who then got COVID after having been immunized have been those who are older. So it's not, but we haven't seen younger healthy individuals have those higher cases of COVID after they've been vaccinated. It's true that we're seeing it in younger individuals, but it's those who haven't been vaccinated at all. So I expect, just like the way that we've worked COVID vaccine throughout, getting those highest risk individuals first. And right now that includes those who are older or at a higher risk for exposure, as well as those first doses of vaccine, and then gradually opening up to those who are younger and we may want a booster then. So this is also, I'll just share, this is also why the FDA was slow even in talking about boosters. The data is mixed, and the reality is Moderna and Pfizer show pretty good coverage for younger, healthier people for quite some time. But we want to make sure that we're getting the individuals whose immunity is waning as soon as we can.
And then one follow-up question is, I have been, when we talk about the higher numbers, and I'm glad that they're going down a little bit, but still pretty high. I assume we're still in the high category. So what percentage of those, if you have that, are unvaccinated? Because that was the other thing, well, if I'm going to get it anyway, and I've heard a couple of people that, have no intention of getting a vaccine, which makes no sense to me. But, it sounds like those that are unvaccinated are the ones that are obviously are the highest risk. But how much of a difference is there? If you know.
Actually wasn't sure if Laura Anderson was going to pull off. The state actually has a new data link that shows the percentages of cases that are breakthrough cases. It still remains an exceptionally low number. I don't have the number off the top of my head. When we're virtual, sometimes I can go there quickly, but I didn't. But we can definitely look at that. But it still remains an exceptionally low number.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your questions. I want to turn back then to our staff for our complete COVID update.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, County Manager, I think we are finished. I'll turn it back to Madam Chair.
I apologize, Madam Chair, Director Holly. I was actually just fed the number, and it's less than 2. It's 1.4% breakthrough cases, so just around 1%, and less than 1% for hospitalization.
Thank you,
Madam Chair, Commissioners. Thanks, Public Health, for those updates. Just a few brief final pieces of reminder as we move toward November 1 as well. Our vaccine and testing policy requirements go live for all employees on that date. There's been a lot of information going out. There's been supervisor training occurring as well. Also, phase 1 of return to office and the flexible workplace policy that corresponds with that work goes live on November 1st. However, because of the high level of transmission per the CDC's continued measure, phase one will open in a remote first environment, which means in general for workers who would fit in the category of being eligible for a flexible work environment moving forward, it remains remote first for the time being. The biggest change is the readiness level. It moves us to a place where when the rate or risk of spread drops below substantial or high to moderate or low, we will be prepared on a 14-day notice to begin to bring phase one employees back in a new return to office environment. And 60 days from that moment is when phase two will then be set to begin to roll out. There's a lot there. I know it can be confusing, so I just want to keep repeating it as we go. And as the board is one of the phase one entities, it's also just important to keep that information in front of you and your staff as well. If you have any questions on any of those, I can take them. Otherwise, thanks for the opportunity to provide the COVID-19 update today.
Thank you very much, County Manager and staff, for those reports. We're thankful for the small but good news regarding a downward tick in transmission and cases and upward progress in vaccinations. We appreciate all of the information given, and we're going to take 30 seconds just to have a moment of meditation in acknowledgement of our ongoing COVID recovery. Thank you very much for that moment of meditation. And with that, we're going to ask Commissioner Fretham to take us into our administrative items. Commissioner Fretham.
Thank you. I would like to move item 4, master contracts for building automation systems. Item 5, appointments to the Capital Improvement Program Citizens Advisory Committee. Item 6, appointments to the Community Health Services Advisory Committee. Item 7, appointments to the Personnel Review Board. Item 8, reimbursement of personnel costs for civil unrest response.
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull that one.
Thank you.
Item 9, closed meeting for labor negotiation strategy.
Thank you very much. All
Second.
items. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second on all items except item number 8. Are there any comments or questions on those items which have been moved? All right, marking none. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
Fretham, Maris Castillo,
Aye.
McDonough,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Ortega,
Aye.
and Carter.
Aye. Thank you very much. All those items have passed. And now we'll return to item number 8, which is reimbursement of personnel costs for civil unrest response. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And a second.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Reinhardt. And I heard Commissioner Ortega for the motion and second. Commissioner McDonough.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. A couple comments here that I want to explain because I'll be voting no on this one at this time. We've continued to try to partner with the Sheriff's Office to ensure that the Sheriff's Office has the funds to meet its statutory requirements for public safety and meeting the expectations of the community. But indications here, and we've been working with the Sheriff's Office for a long time on trying to manage this budget in a way that is responsible to taxpayers. And sheriff continues to spend on many items that are, outside the statutory scope of his office. And, that happens. County attorney does that, but when that occurs, that's done in partnership with the board so that everybody's on board with that scope and funding things outside that statutory authority. I know last year we approved the mid-year adjustment and we did that and I supported that, but this year my preference is to wait to the end of the year. We have 2 more months for the sheriff's office to try to manage his budget in a way that would minimize the impacts to the taxpayers. And one thing that's really concerning to me that, is just one example here is, recently it's been indicated that a number of highly paid sheriff's staff have been working for 2 years on the potential for a charter school here in Ramsey County, which certainly is not a part of the statutory authority of the sheriff's office, but then also indications that utilizing county funds to pay for outside consultants to help move this forward. And that's just one example of ways the sheriff could manage his budget in a way that would minimize the impact to taxpayers, just like every other department in this county. And then having a year-end square up that would be reviewed by finance to ensure that the accountability is there in these types of things. And certainly I understand things happen in our community that demand resources that are unexpected, as certainly as some of the civil unrest, but there are responsible ways to manage a budget to minimize those impacts. And so with that, I will be voting no and certainly would look forward to a year-end square up of the sheriff's budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for that highlight. I also see a hand up from Commissioner Reinhardt and from Commissioner McGuire. I'll have a couple of comments as well. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This one is a hard one because I agree with Commissioner McDonough. And I think at our recent budget hearing, there was also, not answers that we had requested. So we're going to be moving forward on a whole lot of issues. I am going to support this particular request today, primarily because of CFO Kutza's work with the Sheriff's Department. So this is a very specific approval. I am very unhappy with the work that's being done out of the Sheriff's Office that is not, as Commissioner McDonough very eloquently stated, is outside of the statutory requirements. And I expect that by doing this earlier in the year, that we will not see additional money requested at the end of the year, because this should deal with it. And I have no idea what is to come. Every time I open up the newspaper, I get a little more surprised at the breadth and scope of what is being proposed, not just a charter school, but other things as well. So I think that during the budget hearing, we made our concerns very well heard. And I continue to have those same concerns, and I will vote for this today, but it is because of CFO Kutza and knowing that she did, and her staff did monumental work here in conjunction with the Sheriff's Office to make that the request something that I can support. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have 2 hands up now. Commissioner McGuire first, and then I'll call on Commissioner Feather. Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a difficult issue, and we have had many conversations about this. I was actually surprised myself to see this coming before us. Would be tempted to support Commissioner McDonough in his vote, only because I'm curious. Maybe we could get some more feedback from CFO Kutza or County Manager O'Connor as to why we are doing this now and why we don't wait till the end of the year for the budget to be sort of balanced at that point. And I I guess because of previous action, I'm not confident that they're not going to come back to us for even more to balance their budget. So I would rather do it all at once at the end of the year. So if I could just get some maybe more feedback on why we are doing this now. And I also have seen many many actions by the sheriff's office that is not within the scope of his office, and so I am also concerned about this board request.
Thank you. I appreciate the question, Commissioner McGuire. I know we all do. And I am going to call on the county manager to share some thoughts. I know that we have been very carefully proceeding together with the sheriff's office and with our chief financial officer this year. And of course, the board has spoken, and continues to have concerns. That said, I'm going to turn to County Manager O'Connor first before we move on with the questions for response. County Manager.
Madam Chair and members, thank you for the questions and comments so far. CFO Kutza is available if there are specific finance questions, but I believe the message that she would carry forward is she has worked directly with Director Mestad in the Sheriff's Office to clarify the amount of funding coded as civil unrest using the appropriate time code that leads to the request here before you today, and Director Mestad's memo that was provided prior to the board packet and as an attachment outlines those costs. I do want to point out that when the request originally came in, it was significantly inflated from the number that we ended up at as we worked through to an agreement on what was coded as officially civil unrest versus money that was previously in the sheriff's office budget as part of regular pay that just may have required change in priorities or a redeployment of resources a different direction. And so I appreciate the work of both CFO Kutza and Director Mestad to work together collaboratively to get to a final number that we would agree was coded as civil unrest from the dates between January and July. To the other comments made more broadly on the question about timing, as we left the workshop somewhere, I believe in September, in which Sheriff Fletcher presented information about the civil unrest to the board, there was a request at that time for a more delineated set of information to come back to clarify what that information looked like. That memo was produced, and so this is the board seeing the information again now as the civil unrest costs finalize as best as we could get it as follow-up from that board workshop that occurred. The points made by Commissioner McDonough and others about timing are well taken. While the sheriff cites an urgency to the costs, I would continue to point out that other departments, we usually deal with contingency requests from most areas of the organization at the end of the year. However, as an independently elected office, this conversation is one in which it's a little different than many of the others. And so it's taken some of the steps here that I've shared in terms of why it came back forward now at this time. I do not believe that there would be a budgetary duress moment tomorrow or in 2 weeks if, in fact, there was not action today. And points are well taken about developments over the past week, about some of other pieces that have come to light. This request for board action has been being worked on for more than a month, and that has all occurred since production of the information coming here today. I know that's not a perfect and direct answer, Madam Chair. I'd be happy to answer any follow-up questions, but hopefully that sheds some additional light into the process that brought us to the request for board action today.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. I will go back to our questioner for any additional
Thank
response.
you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I do have a follow-up. Thank you, County Manager O'Connor, for that information. I'm just curious about the precedents that we're setting. I understand that an independently elected office. I actually don't recall anything coming before us from either the county attorney or the sheriff prior to this. I mean, I know the sheriff has wanted us to do this, but I just feel that timing is not appropriate, that we should wait. So I don't know if there's much precedent or if this occasion warrants the thing that might have caused us to do this in the past. So I don't know. Do you know of any previous occasions when we've done this?
Madam Chair, Commissioner McGuire, CFO Kutz is coming up to talk a little bit about the timing from previous years to help answer that question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, I just wanted to point out that last year when we brought the civil unrest RBA, we brought it in September, and it covered the Sheriff's Office and other events. I agree with County Manager O'Connor. I think the timing is in your purview of when you feel ready to do this. I also think for planning purposes, as we head into the last quarter of the year, this is a time where, as your financial person, I would say trying to get things lined up, and this is part of something that we've been talking about since August, and we've kind of moved forward together as a team. I've been working with Director Mestad in bringing this forward. That doesn't mean other things haven't happened outside of that process, but that's how we got here today.
Thank you for
Can
that.
I just ask one more follow-up, Madam Chair, with CFO
Right ahead.
Kutz? So does this preclude them coming with any additional costs but at the end of the year? Or that we don't, if we approve this, there still could be additional requests by the end of the year. I just assume see them all together, quite frankly.
Madam Chair, Commissioner McGuire, I'll take that one. There's nothing here that necessarily precludes that, and I think I'm going to turn to the Sheriff's Office, and I'll go to Director Mestad, but I know there are others in the room. It's kind of tough to see on the small screen exactly who we have. For any thoughts around budget and where it stands right now as the board's asking questions and wanting assurances that there will not be additional asks for funding as the rest of the year proceeds.
Thank you. It is hard to see, but I do hear Mr. Miskett in the office, in the chambers.
Commissioners, yeah, Kyle Messett here, Director of Administration.
Oh, okay.
Joined with Mike Martin, Under Sheriff for Regional Services, and our Chief Deputy David Methuselah. So I think with respect to timing, we as the CFO touched on the last request for civil unrest, I did believe come in September, so we're behind that. We going into the last quarter of the year, as we do our projections, as we work on the state fair piece and address all these issues, to me, the timing is ideal for that very purpose. So we can be in a really good spot and present very good solid numbers of how we're going to end the year.
Thank you. So it appears that we have addressed that question. I'm going to, if you have completed, Commissioner McGuire, move on then to other hands that are up.
Madam Chair, tonight, I didn't hear an answer.
I'm sorry. Okay, so Commissioner Mistead has given, I'm sorry. Mr. Mistead has given us a response. The response has been assessed as needing additional clarification. I'll go back to Mr. Mistead.
I think it's pretty straightforward. Is there going to, it sounds like you're saying that there won't be additional things, that you're in solid shape and you won't have to come in with another request, which is what we want to hear.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, I would love for that to be the case. We do know that we've had some budget struggles with respect to differentials, premium, all these different things that we're working through on finance. This obviously will cover a variety of costs that were not included in our budget, so we can hopefully land the year in a really good spot. It's hard for me to give a good number in terms of where we're going to end the year when I don't know what you're going to do necessarily. So the civil unrest cost, having this transferred into our budget to absorb those costs is one step to help us get to a really good spot at the end of the year. So I'm not trying to be vague, not trying to not answer a question. I simply just don't know with all the different moving pieces right now where that year is going to end. The ultimate goal, as always, is to not end in the red, you know, and that wasn't the case last year, and we had the same transfer, we had the same civil unrest costs last year as well. So I'm hoping that between this transfer, what we do with state fair revenue, we're able to be in a really good spot at the end of the year.
I would just also want to reconfirm, Mr. Mistead, on behalf of the sheriff, you have been working with our chief financial officer this past year and have worked through this particular RBA to settle the civil unrest cost. Our anticipation is that you are continuing to work in that collaborative form with our Chief Financial Officer. The board expects that should this pass today, we would continue to see that the sheriff is able to make his budget, understanding that if there are concerns and we receive a response from our chief financial officer that indicates the board needs to act, that we would hear that recommendation coming from her based on the collaborative work that you are doing. Could you please confirm that that is the case and that the board can continue to expect that collaborative agreement, that work toward agreement to continue?
Commissioner Carter, absolutely. I've had several meetings with our new CFO. They've all gone really well. Gearing up for the civil unrest piece, we went line by line through spreadsheets. Mike Martin, our undersheriff, the lead on our civil unrest operational side, walked her through line by line, date, time, number of hours, you name it. So Alex and I text, we call, I think we have a great relationship that obviously would continue. I do appreciate the work she's done to help us get here today. I appreciate her willingness to listen and understand more about how complex our organization is and what we do. And absolutely that should something else come up, I will, and I don't mind speaking for the sheriff here, and he would obviously encourage us to allow us to continue to work with finance so you have the available information you need to make an informed decision.
I appreciate that. Of course, this board will act based on evidence, requests for information that our CFO will make, and recommendations that we receive in that regard. Commissioner Reinhardt had requested that additional response from you. Without any additional comment from Commissioner Reinhardt, I will move on to others in the chamber, to others who have questions. And I know that Commissioner Matas Castillo has had her hand up, although it can't be seen on the screen. I will call now on Commissioner Matas Castillo, recognizing that others continue with their hands. Commissioner Fretham, Commissioner McDonough, and Commissioner McGuire continues to have their hands up. Commissioner Matas Castillo, and we'll move on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess the comments I want to make is because so often anything that's said here in relation to the sheriff's office gets twisted, and the community hears a very different story. And so I want to be very clear that protection and safety in our community is paramount, and I know that we support that. And there were expenses related to civil unrest, and we want to fill that hole and fill that gap. The support for our deputies who are serving on the line is critical, and we support our deputies. The questions and concerns here are about leadership and the way that our budgets are being handled, and the way that we have to protect our taxpayers. And I'll tell you that I was prepared to vote yes on this, and listening to Director Meestad's response to we're not sure if we're going to have more gaps now makes me very uncomfortable. And I'm going to vote no on this particular one. And because without assurances, if we think there's going to be an even bigger gap, then we need to know what that is. We need to know what that looks like so that we can fill those gaps. The concerns here about how time cards are getting coded. You know, the news this week of a charter school sent out with Ramsey County resources on Ramsey County letterhead make us question everything that comes out of that office. And the concern here, again, is how we're using taxpayer resources. Again, protection of our community is critical. Our deputies are doing a fantastic job. We will make sure that those expenses are covered. We just need to make sure that we're not getting wag the dog here with what's actually being happening. And I'll tell you, I know that great work is happening out of the Sheriff's Department and the offices. And we had a saying when I was in the military that this is another time where we're sitting on our own ponchos. There's good things happening, but we can't get up because we keep doing stupid stuff on the other side. And so in this case, I'll tell you, I'm going to vote no. I'm going to join Commissioner McDonough, and it was Director Meestad's own comments that made me lean that way.
Commissioner Matas Castillo, thank you for clarifying your concerns and comments at this point. I will call on Commissioner Fretham and then Commissioner McDonough.
Thank you, Chair Carter. I'll say I can really respect Commissioner McDonough and Commissioner Matas Castillo's opinions or positions here on this. For me, I am going to support this particular vote because I feel like we've committed to covering the cost of civil unrest. You did the work to work with our CFO to verify that. But please know that my support in this is an act of faith as trust building. You know, I'm fulfilling this commitment we made to you to cover these costs, and my expectations are is that that collaboration continues. I know we've requested some workshops coming up. I would really like to see those happen. You know, particularly on the questions of, you know, how our contracts work, how that revenue comes in and is managed, and whether we are making those rate charges fairly for the communities and for all the Ramsey County taxpayers. Questions about our training and development of an investment in our deputies, and also our use of force policies, those policies that could put us at the greatest liability as a county. And so I really hope that we have that continued opportunity. It is my expectation that by doing this approval proactively, that the sheriff's office will come in on budget this year, that this isn't a surprise, and that I hope that if there are questions or concerns, you are working diligently with our CFO to ensure that happens. As to outside activities and the charter school, you know, it's my opinion that, you know, personal activities of our own are our own. So I really hope that there is a commitment. And I don't believe anyone we have in the room today is a part of that project. But I would love to hear from those who are at some point a commitment that this is their own activities, their own work, that it's not happening using Ramsey County time and resources. Because then there could be potential, you know, for liability should something happen if it's marketed or promoted as a Ramsey County project. Anything like that would have to be done in collaboration with the board, and I don't think we're looking to edge into the education spectrum at this time. So I do hope we hear that commitment going forward from some of those folks who are involved. So that's what I have to say here. I hope you can understand. Like I really do feel like, thank you for doing the work to document these expenses. I do think it's our responsibility to cover this. I feel like at least I have made that commitment, so I'll be voting for that. But it does come with expectations of future collaboration and work together. Thank you.
And thank you very much. I'm going to round back to Commissioner McDonough and then Commissioner McGuire before we finish our statements here and move toward a vote on this item. Commissioner McDonough.
Yep, thanks, Madam Chair. Just a couple of clarifying comments here based on my original comments. You know, I have complete confidence in the CFO and the work that she's done, and I appreciate the efforts from Director Meestead and all that work to get to a number that can be, you know, documented and justified to help, you know, keep peace in our community in order. And it's not the dollar amount that I question by any means. A little concerning that the number started with such a high inflation rate and made our inflated rate, and our CFO had to work extremely hard to the level of actually looking at time cards, as Director Meestead pointed out. But you know, that's the nature of the beast here. My issue is the dollars and how we pay for it, and the management of the office. This request will use up, I believe, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but close to 45% of our contingency. And certainly, you know, as I've, you know, called out one example, there are many more where this number and how we pay for this could be different, where we're not utilizing 45% of our contingency, and that is the expectation here. So it's more about the timing. You know, I'm more than willing and committed to ensure that we are fully funding the Sheriff's Office to manage public safety and keep order in our community, and for the sheriff to be able to meet all his statutory requirements. The hard part here is coming in October and using county funds when certainly this number could be smaller depending on the management and choices that the sheriff is using to utilize funds that we've already allocated within this budget. So I appreciate the work of our CFO and Director Meestead. Thank you for spending the time and treating this with the importance it is to get to a number that we can all agree on, but it's not the number that I have concerned with, it's how we pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonough. I'll call on Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Commissioner McDonough just said it so well. That is how I'm feeling as well. And I will be not supporting this because of the timing. It's not the number. It's not that I don't think we should pay for some of these costs, but it is the timing. And I think we should handle it all together, at the end of the year in the budget cycle. And so I certainly support our deputies. I support public safety. We all do. But I'm wanting to be fiscally responsible and handle this at the end. And I do support the CFO Kutza's work on this and Deputy Maystead's, but I just think we can handle this better at the end when we have everything, when we have all of the expenses accounted for.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. We've heard a number of statements on this particular request, and the statements have both been in favor given the work and partnership and collaboration that has been done between the Sheriff's Office, specifically Mr. Mistad, and with our Chief Financial Officer, Alex Kutza. We appreciate that work. We've also heard concerns related to the timing of this request. Noted that responses have been provided as requested by board members when we last discussed this, but also noted that concerns have arisen, that there have been, and I am aware that our administration has shared and will be continuing to share where those concerns exist based on recent activities of the sheriff. We are a governing body for Ramsey County, and we support the sheriff's budget for those statutory requirements in those areas of work that are agreed upon together with this board. There is a lack of trust that is actually the circumstance at this point in time, and it raises a concern. Although we have moved this item forward for vote today, we have the opportunity to either vote it up or down at this point in time, or I'm going to check in with our attorney, Sam Clark, who's on the line, to determine whether a motion to table until a later time would be appropriate at this time. And if so, then we will be able to determine if there is such a motion as we work to move beyond this item. I'll ask that of our county attorney. Would a motion to table be in order?
Rick Carter, yes. The answer is yes.
So we do have the option, if there is a commissioner who would make a motion to table at this time, the chair would consider that to be in order as well. And I would say to do so until the end of the year. Is there a motion?
Well, I'm Madam Chair, I'm open to doing that. I'd just soon table that till the end of the year. So I'll make that motion.
I have the motion from Commissioner McGuire. Is there a second to that motion to table until the end of the year? I don't think the chair can second that motion.
No,
and so that motion does not appear.
Okay.
In that case, we are back to the main motion. I have no additional comments on this. I will ask for the main motion and for a roll call on the main motion. I would state that at this point in time, given the work that has been done, and given our goal of collaboration and participation of the Sheriff's Department together with the county board through the Chief Financial Officer, and the expectation that we will be working collaboratively toward meeting this budget at the end of the year, and also attentively to address any concerns, those that have been shared by board members previously at the table today, and that may be shared in advance so that we can create collaborative work together with our sheriff. I will be supporting this motion to add back the civil expenses to the sheriff's budget today. Thank you so much for active discussion. We will now ask the clerk to call the roll.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
Fretham,
Aye.
Modis Castillo,
No.
McDonough,
No.
McGuire,
No.
Ortega,
Aye.
and Carter.
Aye. Thank you very much. The motion passes. It is certainly an area of concern for this board. It is a different occurrence when we have a 4-3 vote at this table. And for very good reason, we have that today. So we will continue to address our concerns as we move this item forward as it has passed, together with our sheriff throughout this year. Thank you so much. We have managed our administrative agenda, and we are moving on then to our ordinance processes. The first item, item number 10, is the proposed 2022 Capital Improvement Program bond ordinance to waive the first reading. Is there motion?
So moved, Madam Chair. Second.
There is a motion and a second. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to call on the county manager, County Manager O'Connor, for a summary.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. We have Investment Manager, Mr. DeAndre Lindsay, here to share a few comments prior to the motion before you. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you and welcome, Mr. Lindsay.
Hello.
I think you're good. Just go.
We're good? Okay. Good morning, Madam Chair, Board of Commissioners. My name is DeAndre Lindsay, and I'm the Debt and Investment Manager for the Finance Department. I'm here today to present the RBA submitted, which include setting the public hearing date and waiving the first reading. This is the first step in a process that both Ramsey County Finance and the board are familiar with. I want to note at this time, the final bonding for the county will reflect what the board passes in December. This aligns with the $39 million in strategic priorities that is reflected in the 2022 CIP budget. And with that, thank you so much for your time, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. Having difficulty getting back to a particular screen to see if there are hands up. We appreciate the comments that you have made on the proposed bond ordinance waiving the first reading. We have a motion and a second on that. Are there any further comments or questions from commissioners? If not, I will ask the clerk to call a roll.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
Fretham,
Aye.
Modis Castillo,
Aye.
McDonough,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Ortega,
Aye.
and Carter.
Aye. Thank you very much. That motion passes. And the next item, number 11, is on the proposed 2022 Capital Improvement Program bond ordinance to set the public hearing date for November 16th at 9:00 a.m. or as soon thereafter as possible. The complete motion is in the text. Is there a motion on that?
So moved, Madam Chair.
And a second.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to set the public hearing. Are there any comments or questions? We'll ask the clerk to call the roll. Thank you.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
Fretham,
Aye.
Modis Castillo,
Aye.
McDonough,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Ortega,
Aye.
and Carter.
Aye. Thank you very much. And moving toward number 12, which is the proposed Enterprise and Administrative Services Department ordinance. I will note, we'll ask for a motion and second to get it on the table. And then we will look toward moving this forward to another date based on an error in the ordinance that we've been notified of. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Thank you so much. There is a motion and a second, and I do need to inform the board that the chair has been notified. There is an error in the text that needs to be corrected. The RBA is being prepared by our staff working together with the department so that it will be ready for our November 2nd board meeting to be passed correctly. So a motion at this time is asked for in order to table this item until the November 2nd board meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you for the motion and second. Are there any questions on that? I'm sorry, that's not debatable. A motion to table, and so we will move to the vote. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
Fretham,
Aye.
Mattis Castillo,
Aye.
McDonough,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Ortega,
Aye.
and Carter.
Aye, thank you very much. That motion passes. The item is tabled until November 2nd. We've completed our ordinance procedures, and I'll call on the county manager for our county connections update. County Manager O'Connor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two quick updates today. The board received an email right around the time the meeting started this morning, just updating that the courtesy notice that was sent out to voters with polling place changes, elections sent a note to all of you to let you know that there was an error on one of the courtesy notices that went out. It was a vendor side error, and we've been working directly with that vendor to address the error, and there's been a reissue of new postcards to each impacted residents with a correction that's been going on at the vendor's expense. There's a story up about this also at ramseycounty.us/elections. There's a social media message that's been going out as well, and there's been responses individually to the small number of residents who reached out, and we've made a point to directly apologize for the error and make sure we're providing the proper polling location. Obviously, this is extremely important work, and we apologize to anyone watching that there was an error that went out in one of those printing processes. Secondly, and finally, I wanted to just share that we continue to move toward changes in our emergency shelter system to be ready for this winter and to get us through till next spring. Catholic Charities is in the process of moving their capacity back up to a committed goal of 280 residents, which is the originally permitted capacity for higher ground, which was immediately exceeded when the site opened. So this is a good number for them to be at, and we appreciate the partnership in our work to serve residents across the community. This also means we'll be stepping back some of the hotel programs, which are hugely expensive and a big challenge during a time of COVID response. That work continues. There are about a third of the residents in one of the hotel programs currently have housing vouchers awaiting housing. We're trying to work directly to ensure that housing becomes a path, as well as working with other residents there to seek housing for as many as possible so there's not even a transition from one shelter environment to another. After December 1st, the remaining Ramsey County operated emergency shelters will be at Mary Hall, Luther Seminary, and the continued COVID respite that's being operated as well. And we do now see a reduction coming in respite numbers, which is a very good sign, and we continue to look at opportunities to make changes within that program, but it needs to be in alignment with public health, information, and data. A special thanks to Commissioners McDonough and Mattis Castillo for their continued work at various spots, working on the issues of homelessness and housing stability with our many community partners. That's all I have today, Madam Chair. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Not to mention, thank you to all our staff again for the work that they continue to do. And thank you also to the commissioners, Mattis Castillo and McDonough, for a special focus on rate housing and homelessness. I am going to move us on then to our outside boarding committee reports. We will begin that with Commissioner Mattis Castillo. Commissioner Mattis Castillo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple quick updates. I had the opportunity to tour Open Arms of Minnesota, which is a nonprofit that serves and partners with people who have health crises, cancer and ALS and other health issues to make sure that they are fed. Open Arms of Minnesota is expanding their services. They're currently in Minneapolis, but they're expanding their services and are coming over to St. Paul, as about 50% of their clients are Ramsey County residents. And so it's a really fantastic operation, and excited to welcome them over to St. Paul in the beginning of next year. Also, I wanted to share, we have our community human services advisory councils who do great work to inform our human services department on from the consumer perspective. And just want to share that there are openings on all of those advisory councils, and we really want to recruit people who are experts by life experience or service, or have a family member in the areas of adult mental health, substance use and recovery, adult services, children's services, review panel, disability services and support, as well as children's mental health. And so if folks have a passion for that, they have experience, either life experience or from a family member, or they work in those areas, we really encourage you to apply to serve on one of those committees that informs our work. We also now will be compensating our community members who participate in those services to make sure that their time is honored and valued as we value their expertise. And then last comment is, we are exactly 1 week out from Election Day, and so I want to thank our elections team who are working to set up early voting, mail-in voting, and to get ready for next week. These are important elections, our school board elections, there's some referendums on ballots, mayoral elections, city councils in some of our communities, and so we want to encourage everyone to get out and vote and to cast their ballots. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you, Commissioner Matas-Castillo, for those updates, and particularly for highlighting voting and also mentioning our community human services advisories. I will turn then to Commissioner McDonough.
Yep, thanks, Madam Chair. One brief update here. I'm on a small group that's been appointed to help advise the Department of Health and our State Health Advisory Board. This past session, the legislature allocated some, they increased the general public health funding, which gives all the public health departments more flexibility and the ability to address concerns. But they also, a part of that bill was a dollar amount allocated to an innovative infrastructure fund. And the task was given to working through SHAC and the Department of Public Health to come up with a framework and priorities in that. The legislation specifically called out that this is not intended to supplant or enhance current operations, but to be bold in helping to expand and strengthen the infrastructure of our public health system. And so after a number of meetings, we're starting to coalesce around 4 priorities to be able to bring back to SHAC and Department of Health for final approval to get out for grant applications. Those priorities are communication, the infrastructure of communication, and ensuring that public health has the credibility and can strengthen its role in communication. Data. COVID has been kind of called out some of the barriers and gaps, right? I think we've always felt we've had a strong public health system in Minnesota, and even through COVID, compared to many states, it was extremely well run. But data and how we manage and collect data, but then also as there are barriers in how we share data and trying to make sure that infrastructure of data can help benefit the community in the best way. Working with partners, COVID again really highlighted in so many ways our departments of public health were working with partners that they traditionally never have, all the way to the National Guard, to community pharmacies, so many other areas, and to not lose that, but to strengthen that infrastructure of working with partners and delivering a solid public health system that benefits. And then the most controversial, will not surprise this board, is health equity. We've tried to elevate that, certainly with our pushing from our folks within the community, our own public health, Ramsey County St. Paul Public Health Department, Kathy Hedin and Sarah, to really elevate the disparities that we have in our public health system when it comes to not all people get the same outcomes or even have the same opportunities for even the potential of the same outcomes. And I'm pleased to report that even though there was a lot of pushback, I still get people saying, you know, we can't use the word equity. It's divisive, it's triggering and brings conflict. And it's like, no, we need to have these conversations in our community. That even more important, why we need to elevate it and to continue to drive these conversations in a productive and healthy way, so people understand not everybody has that same ability to benefit from our system. So that would be the fourth priority as we wind down here. We still got a couple more meetings to solidify some of the strategies around that, but my hope, and I do believe, we'll stay focused in on those four priorities that I just shared with the board. So thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonough, for sharing with us, for lifting up the four priorities and also continuing your focus on addressing equity within that space together with those stakeholders. We appreciate it. I will move then to Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and yes, thank you, Commissioner McDonough, for all that good work on health equity. So just a few things. Was able to attend a bit of virtual Railvolution. A number of us go to Railvolution when it's in person, but this was virtual, and it's actually really good. They had a lot of plenaries. This is about transit, biking, walking, mobility for all, and a lot of the issues around that. And so that was really good. The Prenatal to 3 Forum that is headed up by our own state representative, David Pinto. They have these quarterly meetings, and Senator Tina Smith spoke at that on the importance, of course, of focusing on our youngest residents. And we're, of course, doing great work in that area. The Large Urban County Caucus had a virtual meeting and continue to, provide great information on how we can get our state and local recovery funds and how we can all work together to make sure that Congress is doing what we most need. And then a kind of a fun aside, I had lunch with former Commissioner Jan Parker and former Commissioner Don Silverda, and they both send their greetings to this board. So it was really great to connect with them. Again, we had 3 from the same district too, and so it was a great lunch. Anyway, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner McGuire, for your report, and I'll turn to Commissioner Ortega.
No report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Ortega. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, last week, as I was looking at my calendar, was really all about climate change and action to be taken. At the international level, I participated in the Climate Smart Municipalities exchange, and that is with municipalities in Minnesota and counties, obviously, from across the state, and Germany. And it is one of the most action-oriented groups I have ever participated in, and it is absolutely wonderful, the work that is being done and the focus, the spotlight that is being done on what we are doing, what is happening in Germany, and how we can learn from each other. And that's how we, end up taking action that is going to be positive, because we don't have a lot of time, and it's just that simple. The other, so that one was international. I also am a member of the National Climate Action Task Force that works primarily with the conservation districts across the country, and working on trying to do things specifically. A lot of it is about agriculture, but it's also other land practices and how we can make change that will be positive for climate action. And then also the Resilient Counties Advisory Board, which I'm vice chair of, and Commissioner McGuire is also on that board for the National Association of Counties, and we really take on the big topics. Again, this is no time to admire any kind of a problem. It's time to take action. And that's what all three of these, and there are many other activities that are taking place at the local, municipal, the county, at state, regional levels, because the time for action is now. I also attended, I'm the liaison to the Ramsey County Library Board of Trustees, and we had a very good meeting and moving things forward so that we have a plan of action that's being solidified at this point, I guess, and they passed a motion in agreement with moving forward with the director, executive director hire, and how that's all going to take place and the actions on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm very pleased with that to move us in that direction and their support for that. I also chaired the Rush Line task force. That's the full 80 miles of the Rush Line task force meeting. We do have a regional rail authority meeting right after this, and I will give my update and make a statement at that time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Reinhardt, for your report. And I will turn to Commissioner Fretham.
Thank you. So I had my first open office hour session on the Parks Ordinance this weekend. It went really well. I did ask for feedback at the end, and those that provided feedback felt like the session answered their questions and eased their concerns. Suggestions for additional ways that we could better reach the public. So I'll be sharing those. I have another session this evening at 6:30. And the first session, I recorded the video of it, and that's posted on my District 1 Facebook page, and we'll also share it through my newsletter so folks can get information. Great conversation with the community, and I started with just a brief presentation to touch on some of the process questions folks had and address some of the primary concerns people have brought to me. I'm so excited about that. I'm glad to do another one tonight. In the last week, we've had meetings with Generation Next, CAPRW, and the Metro Alliance for Healthy Families. Good work coming out of all of these organizations. Generation Next and CAPRW in particular are both doing a lot of internal investment work and growth work. We had a lovely retreat a couple weeks ago with CAPRW. So lots to come there, and I'm excited to share more in the coming months. And then finally, a big thank you to Ramsey County Public Health and their vaccine sites. I was one of the people who got one of those booster shots this weekend on the advice of my GP due to my asthma, which apparently now counts for a booster shot, pre-existing conditions. So thank you to everyone for really easy check-in process, quick, and we were in and out, and it was a great experience. So thank you to all the volunteers there and for Ramsey County Health for making those easy and accessible for everyone.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Fretham. And I will just share a few comments regarding activities of the last week. First, regarding Greater MSP. The Greater MSP Board approved the submission of the first phase proposal for Build Back Better to the US EDA. That proposal went in. It does focus on the bio-innovation industry as a cluster industry, which can be uplifted for the greater metropolitan area with a determined focus on equity. The proposal went in. I want to thank our workforce director, Ling Becker, and also Carrie Collins, our economic development director, for their participation in helping to strengthen the proposal. Along also, I should say, with the Center for Economic, or the Center for CEI, the Center for, oh my goodness, I should know that, the Center for Economic Equity, I believe, but I didn't get that acronym right. In any case, we all work together to lift up a strong proposal. And thank you to Ling Becker and to Carrie Collins in particular from here. I also want to mention that we just had a very, very interesting discussion amongst our board as we worked on the passage of the RBA for civil unrest in the Sheriff's Department. We have recently, over the past few weeks, been able to see in focus, both with praise as well as criticism, Ramsey County's work for transformation in our justice systems. It is determined work that has been taking place over a long period of time with stakeholders united in a focus toward ensuring that our justice systems are aligned with our community's values. We have been working dedicatedly to bring people to the table to do that work together. It is clear that that work is important and it will continue to get a critical eye, particularly in those spaces of our stakeholders. I met this week with one of those groups, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee. Together at that table, we have stakeholders from our jurisdictions as well as from our community. I want to say a special thanks to County Attorney Choi, who has been chairing that stakeholder group for some time, and now also to City Attorney Lindsay, who is the current chair voted in at the last meeting, along with the Vice Chair, Scott Williams, who is our Deputy County Manager for Public Safety and Justice. I also want to be sure that the sheriff knows he has a seat at that table and look forward to his joining us as we align our justice system's transformation to meet the needs of our community in coming years. I wanted to also note that together with County Attorney Choi and city representatives at the St. Paul Intervention Program annual recognition ceremony yesterday, we were able to, as we said in the proclamation earlier, uplift those who do the work of assisting women and men in fighting and recovering from abuse. And last but not least, I will mention that from our Deputy County Manager of Health and Wellness, Kathy Hadeen, last night, we received the news of an unfortunate death of a resident, Joe Lundblad, at Lake Owasso residence. There is attached to that a note from his family, which is greatly appreciated, that expresses such recognition of our staff and community at Lake Owasso residence. So it is with sadness that we recognize the death of the resident, and it is also with great thanks to Kevin and his team at Lake Owasso residence for creating a welcoming environment for Joe throughout the years that he lived at Lake Owasso. Thank you. I want to then note that for the balance of our day, we have a regional rail meeting, which will follow this meeting on the same link. Commissioner Ortega will share that. At, I'd say 10 minutes after our regional rail meeting, we will convene a board workshop on speed limits on county roads. Commissioner McDonough will lead that workshop for us. This afternoon, we have two closed meetings, one on labor negotiation strategy and one to develop or consider offers or counter offers for the purchase or sale of real or personal property in Ramsey County. Those two meetings have separate closed links, private links for board members only. With that, I'm just checking in to see if there are any comments on the screen by commissioners. If not, we are going to be adjourning our meeting and going into our Regional Rail Authority meeting. Should we do that immediately, Commissioner Ortega? And we will take